Okay.
I'd like to call this special joint meeting of the Jerome Town Council and the Jerome Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is now 6:01 p.m. on December 1st. I'm really excited that we're all together here, and that's great. It's really wonderful. Hi, Alex. And so I'd like to call to order and have Candace do our roll call for us, and then I think the deputy clerk is going to do the roll call for planning and zoning. That'd be Rosa. So Candace, would we do a roll call, please?
Mayor Dillenberg,
Here.
Vice Mayor Worth,
Present.
Ms. Barber,
Present.
Ms. Harvey,
Here.
Ms. Moore.
The muted Moore.
Here.
There you go. Cool. Thank you.
Candace, Rosa's having trouble unmuting herself. If you would just do the roll call for P&Z, that would be great.
Oh, I would accept that I don't have a list in front of me.
I was just writing down the list right here.
Let's see if I can.
Okay, who am I missing?
Rosa's back. She's here now.
Okay.
Rosa, would you do the roll call, please, for the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Well, she was.
Okay. Let me go ahead and do it then.
You go ahead, John. If you've got the list,
Thank
please
you.
call the roll.
Sorry about the technical issues. Chair Ludwig,
Present.
Vice Chair Schall,
Here.
Commissioner Vincent,
I'm here.
Commissioner Romberger,
Here.
and Commissioner Harvey.
Here.
Everybody is present from our Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. So Jessamine, Jessamine and I are going to sort of co-chair this thing as best we can, co-moderate. And so let me turn it over to her so you can do this work on the issue with John, this preliminary final site plan review for deck and access stairs at 146 Juarez Street.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome, Michael. So I'm curious if everyone's read it all. I just have one little question towards everyone, I suppose, and that is the deck itself. So our definition of deck clearly states that when a structure has a roof or wall enclosure that keeps out the elements, it's not a deck and shall be deemed part of the primary structure. So if that's true, because it does have a roof, then it's in the AR district that it needs a 20-foot setback.
Yeah, just click on it. I think I'm going to be about to be in it.
Hey, Rusty.
Chair Ludwig, would you like me to comment?
Yes, please.
So I had an opportunity to talk with the chair today about this item. I did miss that the definition of deck in our code, if it does have a roof, it's treated as part of the primary structure, which means it needs a 20-foot setback, not the 5-foot setback that decks meet. So I did have a chance to talk to the applicant right before the meeting. I believe the applicant is on the call tonight and may be interested in commenting as well as soon as commission asks any questions they have. But basically he has two choices. One is he can adjust the covered deck portion back 20 feet, or he can remove the covered deck portion. If the commission wanted to add a condition to that effect, they could do that. They also have the option of tabling the item or denying the item for non-compliance with our ordinance standard regarding covered decks.
Thanks, John. Jessamine, what would you like to have your folks do?
Well, I would like to see if any of the other commissioners have any comments that they'd like to make or any experience in this kind of situation. To me, it seems clear.
Do you want to hear from the applicant? Applicant have any comment?
As long as
yeah.
the commissioners don't have anything first.
Sure, perfect. Thank you. That's,
Anyone? Okay,
Gentlemen,
I'm gonna
Mike.
take that. Oh, hi, Mike.
I went out and looked at the site, and it looked like they were only adding 6 or 8 square feet just for an overhang. Would that be considered restructuring the entire thing?
They are expanding. John Knight here. And just so you know, Commissioner Harvey, I think we're getting some feedback from possibly Council Member Harvey's computer, but it is considered as part of our code. It would be considered a expansion of the structure, and potentially could be an expansion of a non-conforming situation. The AR zone requires a 20-foot front setback or 20-foot street setback. And the applicant isn't entirely sure where the front property line is. So I've asked him to reach out to a surveyor, see if he can confirm where that front property line is. It may in fact meet that 20-foot setback, but if it is covered, it's considered part of the main structure and has to meet the main structure setback of 20 feet. If it's just a deck, then the deck setback is only 5 feet. I know the applicant is here participating tonight. This issue just came to my attention just half an hour ago. I did have an opportunity to discuss that with the applicant. I also want to mention this is a little bit of a unique situation. We were notified that there was construction in process, and we went and spoke to the applicant. We red tagged the site, and the applicant did begin construction without permits. So we are sort of playing catch up here in this case. Because the construction already was begun. They did stop construction after we contacted them and agreed to go through the process. So that's why they're here tonight. But again, the applicant is here if they are interested in participating, commenting. It might be a good opportunity to let them speak.
So I can speak now?
Oh, well, once you're recognized by the chair.
Yes, is everybody else done speaking at this point? Okay, yes, sir, please state your name.
Elias Wetzel.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I apologize for the non-compliance on the permit part of things. I understand that you guys have certain, checks and balances. So I am now in compliance with what you need from me and the inspections and the permitting and all that. So that being said, I guess we're going to have to have maybe a surveyor come in and see exactly where we're at. I think that setback that is on the plans that's on the site plan is actually, I'm hoping that it's incorrect and it's from the road, not from our actual property line. And if that's the case and we do a survey and we are in compliance with the 20 feet, then we will continue with the roof. And if not, then we will not put a roof on the addition, the 12 square foot addition to the deck.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess at this point, we could either accept with some conditions or wait for the survey. Does anybody have any input on that? Yes,
Wait
yes,
is a good idea.
please. Yeah.
Rather than table and have another meeting, once the surveyor has the results and the applicant has agreed to what they're going to do, if we can clearly make a resolution that keeps it all in compliance, I'd be more inclined to do a conditional approval so that the applicant can get their survey and then proceed. For example, if he has the appropriate setback, he can leave the roof. And if he doesn't, he's willing to remove the roof. Either of those two conditions would be compliant. I'd be inclined to make a motion like that and
Anyone else?
The alternative would be to table the issue until we get the surveyor and then get feedback from the applicant, which they want to do, and then approve it. But, you know, if both the options are legal, then we could just do it now instead of have another meeting.
May I ask a question? I don't know if am I in there?
Hi there.
Hi there.
Yeah, sure. State your name, please.
Yeah, I'm Craig Hudson, and I am the Prochaskas, Nancy and Ed Prochaska, who own the property and, you know, been up there for a long, long time. I'm their son-in-law. And so I was the one that hired Eli. I just got a question on that setback issue. If, I mean, it looks as though, depending on where that pin is, I guess, whether it's on one side of the road, or the other side of the road, which would reflect on how many feet back that setback is. If it is less than the required setback, is there an alternative? Is there a ability to, you know, contest that or get a variance on that? Or is it a steadfast rule that if it's not 20 feet, then you have to tear it down and move on?
So Chair Ludwig, I could answer that.
Yes.
So thank you for participating, Mr. Hudson. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to speak with you yet about this, but you do have a couple options, one of which, first of all, I think we need to see if in fact it is 20 feet, because there's some question as to where the property line is.
Yeah.
But you do have the option of an appeal. If this board approves it or denies it, it's appealable to the council. You also have the option of pursuing a variance, which would go before the Board of Adjustment. Both of those would take additional time and effort and money to go through that process. So just be aware of that.
Sure. But I mean, is it, I guess, is the variance, is it reasonable to expect that it's a possibility, I guess, to have a variance, or those variances just don't happen?
I'd say in the case of new construction, something like this without clear identification that the variance criteria have been met, I'd say honestly, it's fairly unlikely that a variance would be approved, but I can't say that for sure.
Okay. So even though it's the deck itself is in compliance, or, you know, I assume that the deck is the deck is already there. So we're just extending it out. It's not going any farther. It's not extending into the setback any more than it currently is.
Right, but you're quote increasing an existing potentially non-conforming situation. So that's how we would look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I agree, Lance, like of doing something conditionally. I'm not sure how the rest of the commissioners feel, if they'd like to pipe in, but if everyone's okay and you'd like to make a motion, Lance, that would be great. Yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Well, I mean, if we offer a conditional approval of some sort and list two different conditions, to keep in mind, I mean, the applicant should be aware that if they come back with a third condition, you know, some other thing they want to do, then we'll have to, you know, bring it before the board. Am I right, John? When we get
correct.
Right. So, I mean, essentially what well, I guess I can make a motion to approve the site plan with the exception of the roof coverage and the deck, pursuant to finding out where the property line actually is. If there's 20 feet, the roof can stay. If there isn't 20 feet, it has to stay a deck and it won't have a roof. So I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Was that Commissioner Romberger for the
Yes, it
second?
was.
Okay,
It was.
thank you.
All right, well, then I will call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, then the motion carries unanimously along with the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman Jessamine, thank you
Mhm.
for your meeting. And if we may go on to item 3 on our agenda, and that is respective roles and responsibilities of P&Z and the council. And again, I would like to be, and I had a conversation with Jessamine a while back and Lance along the way, and I just want you to know how much you're appreciated by the council for the work you do. I mean, you're giving your time and your expertise to the town to do not an easy job. And for some reason, there was a thought out there, because we were discussing who does what, that the council wanted to sort of take over responsibility for P&Z, and that's not the case at all. I think we need to figure out what, make sure we have a clear understanding of our roles. I think there are certain responsibilities that P&Z has, and certainly the council has. There may be a little overlap, but I just want you to know that I want to do it in a spirit of good faith, goodwill, and collaboration and appreciation. Please do not think that the council members don't value and appreciate your work, and that we want to have a meaningful relationship that benefits the town of Jerome, its citizens, and the decisions we make. So that was my little introduction, please. I didn't want there to be any misunderstanding. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to respond. I'm honored to be the mayor. I'm honored to be with this council. As you've witnessed over the last few years, this council has been tremendously effective. And Alex and Sage and Jane and Mandy have done an extraordinary job. Their sole mission is to what they can do to help Jerome. They love it. And so please, there is no malice in any way, shape, or form. We're all looking for opportunities to do the right thing in the best possible way. All right? Even Chuck with his little pet there that is sort of taking over the scene. I love it. So having said that, I'd like to, Jessamine, I don't know, let's look at, what our respective roles are and responsibilities. We'll hear from John and Candace, but I didn't know if you had any comments, Jessamine, because again, we're in this together.
Yeah, I mean, I can say the same things that you have said. Like, I am so appreciative for the council and the P&Z commissioners. I want to all get along. I want clarity. I guess that's really it. And we can just go forward with this meeting and see how it all goes.
Great. Thank you. And if no one has any comments or questions or points they would like to make, maybe we can move on to, I don't know, John and Candace, how did you want to go forward with our talking about the setbacks, yard requirements, and different appeals to the council and thing? How would you like to handle this discussion, please?
Dr. Mayor Dillenberg, I'd like to just do a brief introduction to this item if we're ready to move on to the next item.
Levity and brevity.
Okay, let's do it. So I think this is what really resulted in our meeting tonight, is to see if we can get some direction on, I know the item was kind of vague, roles and responsibilities, but see if we can get some direction on how the P&Z and council work together on some of these items. And this is a perfect example, is this first one having to do with setbacks and the appeals process. And I had suggested in the staff report, one of the things we're not currently identified clearly in the code is setbacks for access stairs. And we were hoping to get some comments on some of these items. And then my hope was to go through these really as a study session, all these different items as a study session, and then come back in probably January and hold hearings in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then they'll eventually go back before the council. So I was hoping to get some comments on these. I've laid them out in the staff report. I'm sure everybody has had an opportunity to look through that. If there are any questions on the staff report, I'd be happy to answer, or if we have specific things that we want to talk about that are on that list, I'd be happy to discuss those. Thank you.
Any council members have any comments, questions, concerns?
Sage has her hand up.
Oh, good. Sorry, I can't see you, Sage, but please go right ahead.
Did we just skip item 3? Like, there was absolutely no discussion about what the zoning commissioner's roles are? Nothing.
Well, I was waiting for comments. I said, anybody have any comments on that? And
That was like snap quick. I didn't even realize you moved on that quick.
Okay. If you have comments or issues, please.
Well, yeah, I guess, has everybody read page 8 of 93 of the zoning ordinance? Let me get in there. Which is Article 1, administration for the purpose. And then it also gives powers and duties. So has everybody on the planning commission read that? Just a question real quick.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then the other thing I do want to bring up that I don't know if anybody read the video that's going to come with, I think it was 4A also. But it's pretty clear that you guys are an advisory committee unless council gives you anything beyond advisory. So like the reason that you guys have authority right now over final site plan is because it's in the ordinance and it was given to you by council. Council has the right to change that. And I don't want to, I know I come across a lot of times rough, and I'm not, Jack said it earlier, I'm not trying to be malicious. I'm just trying to get you guys to understand. We weren't looking to take a bunch of control away from you guys, just so you know. But I just think that everybody needs to understand that according to also the Arizona Revised Statutes title, where's my note? No, I have it over there. I don't have that note over here. I'm sorry, but it's Title 9, Chapter 4, Article 6 gives you the state definitions also, which clearly tell you that you're an advisory committee to council. And I just want everyone to understand that. I have taken several classes and spoken to several attorneys about this in the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage. And clearly we appreciate their advice, and hopefully, like I said, we're not looking to make decisions contrary to your suggestions or advice, but we will have discussions on issues. No group is going to agree on everything. That's just human nature. But I think all of us, you and the council members, all want to do the best we can for Jerome. And I think I appreciate Sage's comments and her attention to detail. It's fabulous. And I think, yes, I agree. And I think hopefully we're moving in the right direction. And
Mayor Jane has her hand up.
Jane, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think tonight is a good example of part of what we all need to do is catch things in the applications and make sure that they meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And Jessamine, that was a great catch. Because we do have, there's a lot of pressure to do stuff fast, get done with it so the construction can begin. I realize that, but we have a lot of sticky issues, non-conforming structures, and we need to make sure that we're catching everything we need to catch, as well as there are a lot of conflicting things in the zoning ordinance, and I think this council is trying to clean up a lot of that so that we don't have the problems that we've had in the past. And I've sat on planning and zoning before as well, and board of adjustment, and believe me, I know what a hard job it is. And I do appreciate all of you for taking this on. I know it's not easy, and I appreciate anybody that's willing to do this. And I hope that there are discussions when things come up in applications to make sure that they do meet all the requirements. And if there are conflicting things in the ordinance, that we try to straighten those out, and that the council and P&Z can work together to do this. And again, I really appreciate you being willing to do this, and I'm hoping it gets better. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Mayor, Alex and Mandy both have their hands up.
Okay, Alex, please, and then we'll go to Mandy.
I want to thank everyone. And I also want to clarify a little bit of what I think Jane and Sage are saying is that the council would like to look at final site plan approval before it's completely approved. Is that what I'm hearing from this council at this point? So we're not trying to take over anyone's job. Teamwork is key to work together. Thank you everyone for coming to the table. And again, being volunteers here in Jerome, the planning and zoning has always had final site approval because the council and everyone are volunteers. So the council gave them that privilege. I don't think we want to take it away. We just want to look at it, especially anything that could be controversial. And again, I think that's what Sage and Jane were saying, but if they would like to say that that's what they're saying, and if the whole council is interested in looking at final site approval before it is totally approved, that is what I think everyone has been talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Mandy, and then if there are any other questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I absolutely want to reiterate our gratefulness for the volunteers in this town, because being on any of the boards, commissions, or council is at times a thankless job, but necessary and highly appreciated. I was wondering if with the Dr. Mayor and the Chair Jessamyn's approval, if maybe Candace and or John or Split It can do just a very brief synopsis of the role of council when it comes to relating to planning and zoning and the role of planning and zoning in relation to council. Just so it's all here on the same page and we're hearing it at the same time.
Thank you, Mandy. Candace, any thoughts on that?
It would be off the top of my head, and
You want me to jump in?
I'll say briefly that council is the appointing body for planning and zoning and has oversight in that respect. But they have given the power to planning and zoning for the site plan reviews. They did take back the final approval for conditional use permits a few years ago. John, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna talk about process a little bit in relation to other jurisdictions that I've done some research on. Yes, the council is the final authority. It is a good idea that there's an appeals process in place, that if you have a lower body on, so let's say, smaller projects, then they have the applicant, if they're not satisfied with the decision, they have the opportunity to go before the council and make that appeal. So if the council is interested in being the final authority on, let's say, site plan review or project with non-conforming, just keep in mind that does take away an applicant's appeal process a little bit. It also takes additional time, additional effort, staff time, and money. So be cautious about what projects you want. Be thoughtful about what projects you want to have final authority on. We have a lot of little projects to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and our Design Review Board. It's going to muddy up the agenda if every single project comes to the council. That said, I think there are projects that are or may be appropriate that go to the council. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. The council is certainly the final authority. In most jurisdictions, site plan review is actually handled administratively, and appeals of site plan review go typically to the Board of Adjustment.
So John, so what you're referring to is the next agenda item, that small projects. And
Well,
that's one component.
That's correct. I think what we're talking about in general is roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
Roles and responsibilities, and I think clearly the council's role is the final authority. It helps. I believe it helps the council and it helps applicants to have the council as the appeal authority on smaller projects. So that gives the applicant an opportunity to go forward with an appeal if they need to. So just something to keep in mind. You be thoughtful if there are projects that the council wants to review. Be thoughtful about what types of projects those are. But it's certainly within the
thank you.
council's authority to review every single project.
Thank you. Candace, any other hands up?
Yes, Alex, do you still have your hand up or was that from before?
I do not. I did not take it down, and I wasn't talking about all the projects in my own opinion. I was talking about new construction and anything that's controversial. And I'll figure out how to put my hand down. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
Sage has her hand up and also Rusty Blair has his hand up.
Rusty Blair, I've heard of him. Yeah. Okay, Sage, please.
I just wanted to say that initially, and I think when we get back into 4A, I have put some minutes from when we actually discussed this. I don't think that council was looking to take everything away. We were wanting to try and figure out what we were gonna make the small projects that can be done through them and not come to us, and what can just go administratively, and then what site plans we want to see the final site plans on, like Alex said, new construction and controversial stuff. And that seems to be pretty frequent up here, unfortunately.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, great. Thank you, Sage. Thank you. And there was another hand you said, Candace? Oh, Chief, Rusty.
Yeah, I think last time you guys discussed this, it was in regards to the non-conforming situations. And if a project comes forward and does not meet the criterion for a build on a non-conforming situation, the zoning administrator can tell them that that is not appropriate. And at that point, they can do their appeal to the council in regards to a non-conforming situation. New construction is pretty straightforward. It already has guidelines, and they should all meet the guidelines for setbacks, and all that stuff should already be in place per the site plan. So unless there's somebody not watching the site plan review, which is John's deal, he should be able to catch whether it's the 5-foot setback, the 10-foot, the 20-foot, or whatever AR is compared to whatever. But I think it's what they were mainly concerned with, and I'm concerned with, is the non-conforming situations that are in place. And we do not want to worsen those by expanding the nonconformity.
Thank you. Thanks, Rusty. Appreciate it. Were there any other hands up, Candace?
Jane has her hand up.
Jane?
I just want to say again, one of my main concerns has been the non-conforming structures and making sure, like Rusty said, that they're not exacerbated and causing issues with fire safety and encroaching on other people's property, that type of thing. And like I said, tonight was a good catch.
Yep. Thank you, Jane.
So.
If there's no further discussion, I don't know, Candace and John, do we need to provide any further direction, or do you believe that you got enough out of this discussion that we can move forward? And then this will be an ongoing process with issues and stuff that I think the secret is that we collaborate and work together. But I don't know, is there any specific direction beyond what we've discussed that we need to put in place?
Nothing that I feel like we need. I think we're going to get into it a little bit on item 4A.
Okay.
As you said, I think it's more of a dialogue.
Yeah, that's my thought, honestly. Yeah. Candace, you okay with that? We'll move to number 4.
I am indeed, yes. Mm-hmm.
Good, thank you. So let's move to 4B, administrative approval of small projects.
I think we want to do 4A. We haven't really.
Oh, I did. Oh, I thought we did.
Jumped it.
I thought we were just. I thought we just sort of gobbled up 4A. Sorry.
Well, you haven't really gotten into the nuts and bolts of it, the setbacks, the appeals, and things like that. And John.
Yeah, we need to go back to 4A.
Okay.
I'm afraid if we don't rope Jack in, if we don't rope Dr. Mayor Dillenberg in, he's going to motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. Thank you, John. Oh, but nonetheless, let's
Thanks, Jack.
go. Okay, let's move through those, please. John,
So-
you want to, yeah.
Just to go backwards a little bit, there are actually three things on item 4A. Setbacks for stairs. We don't have a standard for that. I was hoping to get some additional feedback from the council. We got great feedback from our Planning and Zoning Commission when we did a work session on that. Front, side, and rear yards is the second item, and then the appeals process. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the appeals process, but I think it might be useful to go through each one of these if there are specific questions on or comments on those items, rather than have me jump into the appeals
Yeah,
process.
on the setbacks, I'm curious, any council members have comments on the recommendations that have been made by the commission? Hello? Is that Lacey?
That was Lacey.
Did you want to make?
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead and mute yourself, Lacey.
Yeah.
There
So,
we go.
so let's start with that process. So on the setbacks, if certainly we have the recommendations by the commission, that's great. And I appreciate the work on that. I see Rusty's got his hand up, and is Sage also? I couldn't tell. She does? No, she does not. Okay, Rusty, did you get a chance to look at the recommendations by the commission?
Oh, yeah, I printed out the packet. I keeping close track on the setback items. I want to say a good job on the setback for the stairs and access, John. That looks pretty nice. But I did note that it was consistent with setbacks required for decks. And I think at some point we need to look at the deck ordinance, especially when it comes to the second story in regards to those fireproof materials. Because if you got a second story deck and you're building 5 foot away from a structure, now that's fuel. So I think somewhere down the line, we need to readdress the deck ordinance to encompass some maybe fire-resistant material on second story decks.
Great. Thank you, Rusty. Appreciate that. That's a great suggestion. Any other hands up there or comments?
I'm not seeing any, no.
So we can say, so the setbacks for the decks were pretty okay. The yard requirements, what about that? Any? Yes,
Rusty.
Rusty again.
Mhm.
You're pushing it. No.
Yeah, I'll mute it. Yeah, I just, in clarification of side and front yards, front yards are very important to me, and so are backyards. And we do have very minimal setbacks in regards to side yards. The idea on the side yards is if one person has 5 foot and another person has 5 foot, I got 10 foot to travel in. Unfortunately, we have a lot of existing structures. So not to make it more difficult for a new structure to go in, but it's still, with our topography and stuff, all these things come into effect when we're trying to figure out where we want things. That's why front yard, I need areas so that I can attack a fire. Okay, I need that area where I'm pulling up my apparatus and I'm not having my apparatus in the collapse zone. And that means that if the building falls, it's gonna, land on top of my fire apparatus. So those, switching them around is really not ideal. I noted that where we have unusual shaped lots, suggesting that maybe the yard be less or whatever. I think that's something that should be, have to go through appeals or whatever to make their case. If it's up against a retaining wall, which we have those, 20-foot retaining walls, concrete, and there's a road up above it, that's not so much of an issue. I still need to get back there, but I can approach it from the top side and dump water from the top. So these are, you know, to just make, say this is set in stone this way is really not going to be ideal for Jerome, because Jerome is unique in every sense of the
Yeah,
form. You know,
thanks.
nothing is user friendly here, you know.
Yeah,
So, and
no, but I
so-
appreciate that. We need to be sensitive to the needs for protection from fire. I don't want firefighters at risk. I don't want the equipment at risk. So
Yeah.
thank you. I'm curious, Jessamine, is there any comment that you or some of the any commissioners may have in this regard relative to 4A and some of these things from your perspective or the direction we're going?
Hi, I feel like we made all of our recommendations at our meeting. I'm not sure if anyone has anything else to add at this point, but I think we were pretty good.
No, wow, that's
when we
great.
discussed it.
Thank you. That's what I thought. So I just want to make sure I give that you have the opportunity to share that or anything.
I see
Okay.
Councilmember Barber has her hand up.
Yes, does-
Alex?
I do. To Rusty, a follow-up on what Rusty talked about front, side, and rear yards. When we're setting this in stone and turning this into an ordinance, why don't we have with fire department's approval? So when we have an odd lot and we're determining what yards are what, we have our fire department on site to make sure everything's safe. That sounds like a contingency that could be added in here very easily.
And meaningful.
Just a
Yes.
thought.
No, it's a good thought. It's a good thought. Thank you, Alex.
Mandy has her hand up also.
Okay, Mandy?
When we're talking about definition of which is a front, side, rear, if any of those exist, because some of our lots don't have them, or some may have more than one. I'm curious because I don't see anything in the notes about what the commission had recommended. You know, we've got the two approaches, allowing the applicant to elect or a generic statement for rectangular lots, and allowing the commission to determine which are which for unusual shaped lots. I'm not against the idea of also including the fire department on some of that. But I don't see anything in any of the notes that says what the commission is recommending as far as how those are determined, because I would like to see something more permanent in the code to make it a little easier on the process. So I guess I'm curious, Chair Jessman.
Or I can,
Right,
Yeah, or-
John, if you want to start, yes.
my understanding of the discussion that we had is that we talked about different ways to approach this. And I asked Commissioner Shaw, who'd been there a while, how it's been done in the past. And for the most part, it's been done on a case-by-case basis for unusual shaped lots, with preference given to the applicant's preference. Now that could easily be expanded to include with review by the fire department. So if we wanted to actually add something into the code that unusual shaped lots, yard determinations could be made by the Planning and Zoning Commission with recommendation from the fire department. That might be something that that we could add to that.
I like that.
But if I misstated that, any of the commissioners, please correct me.
No, I think you're right, John. I see it's on page 2, one of 2, or 2 of 2, where we had the applicant determination. But I also like having fire approval as well. I think that was a great idea, Alex.
Great. Thanks, Jessamine.
Sage has her hand up.
Oh, yes, Sage, please.
I
Unmute yourself.
totally
There you
agree. Yeah, sorry, I was getting my hand down.
No, you're doing good. You're good.
And my finger's still a little numb from cutting leaves.
Oh,
But I agree. I really like the idea of, especially for fire and safety issues involving the fire department and the yard determination, Because if an applicant decides that they want a yard and we just let them do that, and then later on down the line, Rusty has to go and try and fight a fire and that yard is not sufficient for what he needs, then
Yeah.
I think he needs to know that up front. So I think that adding the fire department's approval to some of these might be really good.
Thank you. I agree. What are we?
Well,
Okay.
Mandy has her hand up. I'm not sure if it's from before or a new one.
No, it's just a clarification question.
Please.
On the setbacks and access stairs situation in Candace's memo, it notes that, as we discussed in our September 21st meeting, council's recommending a 5-foot setback similar to the deck, and that stairs within that setback be approved only by variance. And I just want to make sure that we're all still on the same page with that, including the commissioners, as well as recognizing that if a home has existing stairs that are within that 5-foot setback, to the lot line or to the right of way, and there needs to be a repair done, that doesn't necessarily eliminate their ability to have that particular set of access stairs.
Rusty has his hand up.
Rusty, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, there is provisions in the code that we cannot restrict them from replacing their steps. It'd be ideal if they can upgrade them to meet current standards. However, if they do not fit within the space, fire code allows for that to happen. Like I say, if we can upgrade the material, that's excellent, to a fire resistant material, but we cannot stop them from fixing their steps.
Repair or replace, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Just want to
Yes,
add
John.
on to that a little bit. Regarding Councilmember Worth's question about the 5-foot setback, I think that's absolutely appropriate for stairs on the side yards. But keep in mind, many of our stairs connect to the streets or sidewalks. So the front setback actually needs to be 0, or we need to have another way to address that. We're not going to make people jump the last 5 feet from their deck or stairs to the sidewalk. So
Yeah.
we do need to address the side setbacks as 5 feet. I think the rear setbacks appropriate as 5 feet. One of the things we've talked about is maybe actually requiring that a landing be incorporated, so that if the fire department does, let's say the stairs go down from the sidewalk, it's going to be tricky to have a bunch of people running down those stairs if there's an immediate drop, that it might be a little bit safer if we have some sort of landing. So we need to, I'll get with Chief Blair, and we'll see if we can work out some of these little details.
Thank you.
Chief has.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Yes, Chief.
Yeah, it is in under C in your description there in regards to a landing. So I think it's in place there on this. Also in regards to the fire resistant material, if it's less than 10 feet, my fire code says 10 foot, and then you need to have fire resistant materials. However, if it's a wooden stairwell already and you're just fixing the wooden stairwell, we can't really make you make it out of metal. I would encourage it, but still on that note, we cannot make them do that at this point, I don't believe.
Thank you. All right, John, where are we at on that discussion there?
I think we've got great direction, unless there's any more
Great.
comments from Council Commission.
Any
I
other
did want to touch base on the appeals process.
Okay, let's.
Dr. Mayor,
Yes, Mandy.
I agree with John. I'd like to talk about the appeals process.
Yes, I agree.
But we also have on this list site plan review.
Oh, yes, item number 4 is site plan review. Thank you.
Okay.
So we're not there yet.
Okay, so did you want to comment, Mandy? I see Sage. Sage, did you have your hand up there? Okay, Sage.
I did. I just have a couple notes on here for the appeals process. And I know we talked about different distances for who is affected and who can appeal. And I still feel like maybe 300 feet is a little too small of I don't even know how to say it. It's not enough. With the slope of our hills and stuff like that, I'm thinking maybe we need to go a little bit higher than 300 foot, maybe 500 foot. And then I'm kind of really liking the 15 days for P&Z. So that's what I have to comment
Thank
about
you.
that.
If I could,
Any
if I could
comment?
answer the 300-foot item
Sure.
really quick.
Yeah.
What we talked about is 300 feet because of the slope topography of Jerome, 300 feet may not be appropriate in some situations. So the way some jurisdictions deal with it is the applicant is simply required to demonstrate how they might be adversely affected. So that's a pretty low bar. I don't think moving it to 500 feet is a problem, but I think you could be 1,000 feet and clearly demonstrate that a new project that is down 1,000 feet away could adversely affect you. So even if it's 500, it may not be enough. So that's why we added, I think we should add some wiggle room that says, unless the applicant can demonstrate how they would be adversely affected. So that's my suggestion at this point on appeal distance.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the appeals issue?
Dr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would be inclined to agree with both Sage and John on this, that, maybe we set a distance with a codicil that says, or if the applicant can demonstrate that they're
Demonstrate.
adversely affected.
Yeah.
Because Sage is right, I'm in our neighborhoods, we can hear things up and down pretty dramatically. Also, especially with drainage, which I know that Jane had brought up previously, if a house is built 1,000 feet above you, but there's a pretty much a sheer cliff between you and that house, their drainage is going to affect you. So I want to make sure that we allow for any appellant to be eligible should they be able to demonstrate that adverse effect.
Great. Well said. Thank you, Mandy. And Sage, you're agreeing with that, I assume. So yes, good.
Jane has her hand up.
Yes, Jane, please.
The minutes of the September 21st council meeting that Bill Sims was present, and we discussed all these things, stairs, setbacks, appeals. He has a lot of good information and recommendations, and I think he did say something, and we can figure out how to word it legally, that if you can prove that you're directly affected, 300 feet, or
Right.
prove you're
Yeah.
directly affected.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Thank you very much.
Jessamine also has her hand up.
All right. Oh, Jessamine. Yes, ma'am.
The commission had talked about this. I don't see a number, but as far as the appeals fee, I was thinking, or my memory was that we thought $50 was appropriate for an appeal fee. I don't know if anybody has any other numbers that they want to put out there, but I do think that there should be a fee to appeal.
Thank you. That's a good
And
suggestion.
that is, most
Dr. Mayor?
jurisdictions do require.
Yeah.
appeals
Yeah.
fees.
Does anybody have another opinion on that?
Alec
Dr.
has her hand up.
Alec?
Sage had her hand up first. Sage, speak first and then go after you.
Okay, Alex.
Actually, a question for, I don't know if Candace or John wants to take this question. Do we have an idea of what the staffing costs are when someone does an appeal?
I can say that we had an appeal recently, and it immediately engages our attorney's fees, and those can rack up pretty quickly. It's going to vary dramatically. Appeals sometimes can turn into lawsuits, so we have to early on engage with the attorney. So $50 in no way is going to cover an appeal. But there's kind of two kinds of appeal. One is the applicant is not happy with the decision. They think it should have been approved or denied or changed or conditions. The other is a party who feels they're adversely affected, and that's the kind of appeal that's going to cost a lot of time and money with the attorneys and staff time. thousands of dollars.
So
Thanks,
I just
John.
want to follow up. I think that we need to consider that in setting an appeals fee. And we also need to consider that if we set it too low, then we might have a lot of frivolous appeals.
Yeah, good point.
Mandy,
And
hand up.
yeah.
And
Alex,
Jack,
And Alex, yeah.
yeah.
I was just going to ask how much of a fee the other Verde Valley communities charge? Because I did not see that in our little breakdown of different things that different towns do as far as the appeals process. So that's just a question to segue of what Sage had said, that $50 with all that time and effort and automatically calls to our attorney does not just seem right. So that is a discussion that I won't continue now. We'll let Mandy talk, but we should all think about that.
Yes. And should we have different appeal fee depending on the depth, what that appeal
Type
is?
of
Some may be
appeal.
very easy for $50, but others, we may need to put some criteria in there if they're potentially more expensive, bigger issues. So I would not have a problem with, a couple of different appeal fees. But go ahead, Mandy. Does Mandy had her hand up?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm curious in this fees discussion, because I agree, some things are quick and easy and, move forward fairly fast. But anytime we engage the attorney, or if an appeal moves considerably slower or through many more channels, it's going to be considerably more expensive. Is there any precedence, and maybe this is really a John question, amongst other jurisdictions to have essentially a graduated fee scale similar to how we do building permit costs? Building permits have when you get a building permit, you have a base fee, and then you have additional depending on what's going on and the price of things. Is there any precedent to do that with an appeals fee, John?
If I may answer, Dr. Mayer.
Yeah, of course.
I did find a dramatic variation between appeals fees in the Verde Valley. I think I checked Flagstaff in the county as well. Some of them, $50 would be extremely low for an appeal. I think most of them were around $200. One jurisdiction, I think, was in the thousands. And I think I saw one jurisdiction where you put down a deposit, and then they work against that deposit. So I can't remember for sure because it's been a while since I researched that, but I'd like to come back with that information and provide that to the council. I can do that via email.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and let Jessamine know how you're doing on that. I think she was, she had mentioned $50. I don't want to give her sticker shock now. I said, oh, it's now $500. we left a zero off. So please.
I'm okay with it. I was just putting.
No, I
my-
know. I just exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I just want to make sure you. Yep. I wanted you to be in the loop, and so that we're all in agreement of what's fair, but at the same time recognizing the potential expense. Like you said, Bill Sims is not, any of these things, and they vary. So yes, it's a great point. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so any more on the appeals, please?
Fire chief has his hand up.
Uh-oh. Chief?
Yeah, in fire code, it's my code states that you cannot nullify any part of the code. What it states is that you can appeal whether we interpreted the code as it is written. So if you put that in your code too, then you got to follow your code to the exact, and it's more about appealing your interpretation of the code.
Thank you.
And those appeals of administrative decisions do go to Board of Adjustment, by the way.
Got it.
So there is a provision for that already, but not a fee.
Is there anything we're leaving out of 4A at this particular point?
I think we want
Dr.
to
Mayer?
briefly talk about the appeals period as well.
Yeah. Yes, Mandy?
Yep. I was just looking at the list, and under 4A3, we've talked about A, the distance, B, the appeal fees. But we still need to address appeal period and
Yes.
building permit issuance.
Thank you. John, you want to take us through that?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I did put together a list of different jurisdictions. As I mentioned previously, it's difficult because most jurisdictions handle site plan approval administratively. So those appeals would actually go to the Board of Adjustment. But the common appeal period for items that go from a Planning and Zoning Commission or design review is typically 15 days. I think Flagstaff actually had 10 days. Which I think is a little short, but 15 days is pretty common. Cottonwood, Sedona, Clarkdale, for many of their items, they use a time period of 15 days. For administrative appeals, they use a period, most of the jurisdictions use a period of 30 days. And those are items that go forward to the Board of Adjustment, not to the council. So, my recommendation is, my suggestion rather, is to use that 15-day period. I think most people, if they know they're going to appeal, they know by the, before 15 days is out.
Yeah.
And it's related to the next item on the agenda, which is on that list, which is, do we allow the applicants to proceed with work during the appeal period? Sedona, for example, I don't know because I haven't talked to other jurisdictions, but Sedona, for example, they're not able to issue a building permit until the appeal period is passed. That protects the applicant and that protects the town or the city. If they get an appeal and then it's overturned and somebody's already started construction and we've issued a building permit, I think that's problematic.
It is. I agree. Thank you, John. Any comments from commissioners or council members, please? All right. I think 15 days is a good mark. I think we all sort of agree to that. I think so.
And then the building permit,
and the building
withhold the building permit
until the 15 days is passed.
Great.
That sounds great.
Agreed.
Next item. Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Next.
I think this item number 4 on this list is the Planning and Zoning Commission's role in reviewing site plans. Site plan approval currently stops with Planning and Zoning Commission unless it's appealed. We've had some great discussion about projects that are, let's say, more controversial, larger, more complicated, or non-conforming. I don't think we yet have clear direction on what projects those might be. If you'd like, staff can meet. We can meet with a couple of council members, maybe, and a couple of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, and maybe we could come up with a list of what types of projects those might be that might go forward from Planning and Zoning Commission to council automatically. I do know that in a lot of jurisdictions that use a hearings officer, so the hearings officer tends to be the zoning administrator or the chief planning community development director. A lot of those jurisdictions have a provision in their code that allows them to approve a certain number of projects administratively, but then there's a little outlet that says, unless the project is determined to be controversial or there's some other things. So there may be some way to address it like that, normally it goes to Planning and Zoning Commission unless it's determined to be, controversial or whatever. So
no, I
put a little more thought into that. I'd be curious to see if any of our commissioners or council members have any.
Gentlemen, I think, I like the idea of a collaborative discussion on that with John, representatives from the commission and the council, if there's interest in that. I like that. Jessamine, any thoughts on that? You think it's a good idea?
I think it's a great idea. I would love to know. I mean, I think that we definitely need to know which type of site plan or what it is that you feel is controversial, or just so we have a better idea of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So those who are interested in participating in that discussion, would you please reach out to John? And John, you can shake the tree a little bit too.
Great.
Who might be interested. But I think it's a great idea to bring both groups together to discuss that collaboratively.
Mayor
Great.
Jane has her hand up.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jane. I think.
Included in our packet is information from Bill Sims, the attorney. And he says in here, giving a planning commission final authority to take action on a matter is not customary in reference to site plans. Typically, planning commissions only make recommendations to a city or town council for council consideration and action. So I think I just think because of the unusual nature of either non-conforming structures or site plans in particular, of new construction, perhaps that it's an unusual lot, that I would like to see the council be able to look at those kinds of things.
If I could.
Yeah, John. Thank you, Jane.
I appreciate Councilmember Moore pointing that out, what Bill Sims said. That may be true on ordinance amendments, subdivisions, larger projects, things like that. But site plan approval is primarily handled at the administrative level in most jurisdictions in the Verde Valley. It does not go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I think Jerome is unique. I'm not sure about Clarkdale, but most of those site plan approval typically stops at either at the administrative level or the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right. Jane, did you have a follow-up comment?
Yeah, I just think because of the unusual nature of the town, the small size of lots,
Yeah.
the fire danger, fire safety issues, parking, all of that kind of thing, that I just would like major construction, even if it's a house on an unusual lot, small lot, non-conforming structure. And I'm not talking about small, additions, things like that at all. I'm just talking about site plans for new construction on lots and non-conforming structures. I just think until we iron out some of the issues we have in our zoning ordinance, I think that having the planning and zoning make the recommendation to council, I think is a good thing.
Thank you.
Mayor Sage has
Any
her
oth-
hand up and Alex has her hand up.
Okay, Sage, then Alex, please.
Yeah, I just want to bring to attention, if you go further into the notes that Bill has here, let's see, it's the page 3 at the very bottom underneath planning and zoning role when reviewing site plans. He refers to the site plan review provisions of the town zoning code, including a separate appeal process found in section 303D. That is only listed under 303D, which is actually grading and excavation requirements.
Right.
So I'm thinking that we need to put that throughout the rest, like underneath 303 too.
Yes, we did catch that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thanks, Sage. Thank you. Alex, please.
And I wanted to agree with Jane on that this group, the planning and zoning and the council together, if the planning and zoning looks at it and then the council has the final okay on those tricky situations, is how I'm going to put it, that it would have more eyes on the prize and less things would slip through the cracks. Because when we're all here at the table, we all have different valid ideas and suggestions, some of which turn out to be revelations. So thank you everyone for working it together as a team. It's amazing.
So
that's great. Thanks.
Again, I'm hopeful that we can get a 1 or 2 P&Z members and 1 or 2 council members come sit down with me and we can kind of hash this out, come up with a recommendation.
Yep. I love it. I encourage it strongly.
So yeah, reach out to me if you'd like to meet, and we'll sit down next week sometime maybe and go over this.
That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, have we finished 4A?
Number 4 is done.
4 is done?
4A is done.
The minutes, please,
4A is 4A is done.
4A is done. We had our 4A, so to speak.
There you
go. Administrative approval of small projects. What, I mean.
May I give a staff report?
Yes.
This has been talked about long before I got here. Unfortunately, we haven't, this is always gets set aside and we end up working on other things. So I'm hoping to get some clear direction, if possible, to get some comments, some good comments on what level of projects could be approved administratively. I think most people agree something like paint. Changing the paint color of your railing on your deck, that should not require design review board approval. But I've listed a whole bunch of items. Basically, I went through the last year and a half or 2 years and tried to identify items that have been approved in the last couple of years and tried to add some items that should be considered or could be considered. I'm not recommending we add all these items. I'm just trying to get some direction and discussion on which items we think could be handled administratively that would dramatically help speed up the process for applicants with small projects. And honestly, I think little things like fences and paint colors, you're more likely to get people to comply with the process if you make the process simple enough.
Any questions or comments from anyone, please? Hearing none, I think that's not unreasonable.
I think there's some comments.
I see Alex.
Alex, Rusty, and Sage all have their hands up.
Oh, boy.
I saw Rusty's hand up first.
Okay, Rusty.
So I'll go after Rusty. I can't see Sage.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with most of these, and I do see that these projects will still be in compliance with the code standards regarding height, setbacks, and coverage.
Yes.
Still with our topography and stuff, I think it's something that, especially residential addition, less than 120 square feet, I would like to get my eyes on that. Modifications to existing residential structure, that adds no square footage. What does that actually mean? A shed under 120 square feet, that's a 10 by 12 shed. With our topography and where is it going to be on the lot, and what is our accessory building code and the zoning code say towards that? What are the setbacks around an accessory building? Does it still need to meet the 10, 5, 20, or how does that work? So those three there are what are catching my eye.
Thank you. John, okay, so.
Well, just to clarify, these are not exempt from meeting the standards. They still have to meet the standards. We'll have to specifically identify these things in the code that can be approved administratively. I would suggest we include something that requires review by the fire chief as part of that as well. And that would hopefully take care of that. But they still, keep in mind, they still have to meet our design standards. They still have to meet the setback standards, coverage, height. And to answer the question about modifications that add no additional square footage. So let's say somebody decided they really need a cool dormer window on their second story, and they're putting in a little window on the second story. It doesn't add any square footage to the building. So that's the kind of thing that I was thinking of when I wrote that.
Thanks. Sage has her hand up. Chief, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I just don't know what the standard is for accessory buildings for setbacks around the accessory buildings. How close can it be to a structure? What does it have in our code? Or do we have anything in regards to our code regarding those type of structures?
We do. I don't have those off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Sage?
And Jack?
Oh, I'm
Jack?
sorry, Alex. I apologize, Alex. Yeah, you were gracious enough to let the chief go before you. Thanks, Alex.
I wanted to just talk about, I think that Rusty pointed out the three that I thought shouldn't just be approved. When you talk about administrative approval, it's not just John that's going to be approving these. He's going to be including probably 2 other people, like have Barry look at it and have Rusty look at it. Like when I say administrative, I assume that it's not just one person, it could be more than one person. So I just think that little things like paint stain, window door replacement, these are things that shouldn't be tying up the board's time, but with building and fire, okay, was my 2 cents.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. And Sage, Sage next, I believe.
Yeah. So my concern with 13, the modifications and improvements, is just that, isn't that usually something that goes through DRB if they're changing anything? And the historical value of, the look of homes with that. I'm also a little concerned about the residential additions of less than 120 square foot, because I think that everything that is added onto in Jerome needs to be cleared through planning and zoning and DRB and make sure that it's going to be what it's supposed to be. The sheds, I question that too, because it is, you could park a car in that. My other one though, that really kind of jumped out at me is the walls less than 48 inches tall, because in Jerome, a lot of times people decide they're going to go build a retaining wall. And we really need a retaining wall to be sound and engineered correctly up here. And generally, if a wall is built up here, that is what it's for. So I just wanted to kind of shoot that out there for everyone to consider.
Thank you. Any other comments?
And then Mandy, and then Rusty again.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I agree. There's some of these that could be approved administratively, especially things like paint and stain. But some of these also require a building permit. I mean, anytime you're doing concrete work, you require a building permit. So does it necessarily need to go in front of the commission? I don't know, but I want to make sure that we're very clear when we write this, that even though it may not have to go in front of the commission, it still requires some sort of a permit or inspection. Window and door replacement, if we're going to put that on there, then it needs to be really clear what materials are acceptable and what are not. Number 4, stair replacement, no change in footprint, good with that. Awnings, as long as they're in conformance with the code, good to go. Same with signs. Decks and patios, I mean, if someone's putting a little tiny thing out there, that's one thing. But as we found, sometimes what is considered a deck or a patio is really part of the structure. So there may just need to be some description under there as far as what types are administratively approvable and what types are not. Fences would, I have the same concern that Sage had about walls less than 48 inches tall with fences, because a 3-foot high picket fence is a really different thing than a 10-foot high privacy fence. Changes in roof material or color, sheds under 120 square feet. I think that's a little big, but I'm not against doing sheds in general, as long as they're meeting setback. Residential additions of less than 120 square feet. Now, I know that like in Cottonwood, you can do a residential addition up to 300 square feet without even getting approval or a permit. But when we're talking about 120 square feet, I mean, that's on some of our lots, that is big. And I recognize that adding a small residential addition to accommodate, for example, safer utility access, or if we need it for ADA compliance, makes sense. But I think 120 square feet is excessive on that. And then I also agree with Sage that modifications, improvements to existing structures with no additional square footage is really, that's really a design review thing. And so again, just to make it clear in the code that though something may be administratively able to be approved, there may be a secondary person or board or permitting process that needs to be managed doing that. I think anything that's a new build needs to come in front of the commission. I have a really hard time with anything that's a new build, because a lot of times when you've got somebody doing a brand new build, they're traditionally someone that is new to Jerome and fairly unfamiliar with our process. And then demolitions, I would want to have some form of, definitely some differences and controversial projects. So I'm pretty comfortable with the bulk of this list as is, with some really clear notes for our code, and so that everybody is on the same page. Thank you,
I
Dr.
like
Mayor.
your thoughts about the flexibility there on those things. I think that's really, I think you hit something with that as well.
Keep in mind, we're going to be updating our design standards. So some of these things like fences, changes, modifications to structures, add no additional square footage. Those will all be addressed as part of our new design guidelines.
Thank you.
Mayor Jane has her hand up.
Jane?
I'm fine with most of the beginning ones, down to 8 or so. I believe the zoning ordinance addresses if they're talking about rock walls or retaining walls. I think the ordinance already says something about up to 4 feet, so that might need to be looked at in the ordinance. As far as sheds, residential additions and modification and improvements to existing structures, I'd really rather wait until we have our design guidelines, because maybe, I mean, I don't have a problem with it being administrative approval. Yes, you could do it, but I would like to see that go before design review.
Thank you. Chief, did you have your hand up again?
Yes, he does.
Let me get down to my mute button.
There you go.
Yeah, just a few things. Don't get me wrong, I do not want to be involved with paint, stain, landscaping, all that. I don't need that in front of my desk. I got a lot of other stuff to do. However, concrete paving is considered landscaping. Walls less than 48 inches do not need engineering. However, they still probably need the permit process. Anything over 48 inches on a retaining wall needs to be engineered.
Right.
When we have issues where we have a lot of those happening without engineering. Sheds and residential additions and stuff, I would like to be involved in, and modifications. Just simply make sure that I'm going to be able to perform my duties around them. With a shed, it could all of a sudden become a laundry room. Now, does that change it into something different? What is our accessory buildings code say in regards to that kind of thing? And once you add water, gas into a structure like that, now it is a different type of structure. I know that there's some sheds around here where we got people living, you know, so, and the code says that you need 200 square foot for every person. That's what my fire code says. I know that that isn't ideal in a lot of places where you have 1,000 square foot house and you have, that gives you 5 people in it. So, but if you have 6, do you kick the 6th one out? You know, probably not.
No.
So,
Thank you.
at any rate, and then on projects that should not be subject to administrative approval include I'm okay with most of that, so.
Thank you. Any other hands?
Sage has her hand up.
Okay, Sage, please.
Just follow up. Thank you, Mandy, for catching the demolition. I had it highlighted and I just missed it. For me, demolition, I think, is also history. And I think that that's addressed in our code. Because if you can just go and demolish whatever and one person can tell you, oh yeah, we don't know what that is, go ahead, get rid of it. Then, you know, what if it was a historical thing?
Yep, got you. Thank you. Any other discussion? No. Getting close to our 10-minute break time.
Jack, I just wanted to bring up the appeals before we move on.
Yes, please.
It talks about the appeals. The process should be retained. But talks about merit in considering different appeals processes. John, will you explain that a little bit more?
Thank you, Councilmember Barber. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that items that are administratively approved currently go to the Board of Adjustment. They do not go to council. So if the council specifically wants, let's say we decide sheds, walls, additions of less than a certain size can be approved administratively. If the council wants those appeals to go before council instead of Board of Adjustment, we'll need to address that.
Thank you.
There may be merit to actually having those appeals go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but then that appeal would potentially go to the council. So I think it makes the most sense to keep the administrative process in place, which means the appeal goes to the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you
I just
for
wanted to make sure.
clarifying that, John.
I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Good. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, John. Any further discussion before we move on to the next item? No, hearing none. Commissioners, I hope you are well. Okay, John, what do we got next?
Moving right along. Item 4C, code amendments to residential lodging. We have had work sessions with our Planning and Zoning Commission. We've made some great progress on this issue. This was originally brought up as part of the project formerly known as the Cuban Queen. And we have some old definitions in our code currently for boarding house and rooming house. And we wanted to clean those up, and we found out that it did ripple into some other definitions for hotel and bed and breakfast. And I provided a red line strikeout version of some suggested changes for the
No motels.
no motels needed.
No motels.
Mostly the change includes getting rid of the definition of boarding house, getting rid of the definition of motel. And we got into some discussion about what is a bed and breakfast and how to treat the bed and breakfast, whether it's in the residential area, and how to treat that when it's in the commercial area. And I think we're in agreement at the Planning and Zoning Commission level that transient lodging is transient lodging in the commercial area. So that should be treated as a hotel. And so we've clarified that in the definition. So I think that mainly we're just clarifying a few things. This might be a little bit confusing. I think there is some thought that needs to go into whether or not we want to modify the definition of the number of rooms of bed and breakfast. So I'm just wanted to throw that out there in case there are any comments. Thank you.
Where does parking fit in?
Any new development would require parking. Currently, bed and breakfasts are treated the same as our vacation rentals, and we can't require parking under the state law. So that's unfortunate.
On a B&B, can't require.
In the residential, in an existing home where somebody converts it to a, whether it's a B&B or a short-term vacation rental, we can't require parking, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, honestly.
Sage has her hand up.
Please, Sage.
The only thing that I had marked down in all of this was, why are we changing from 3 to 4 rooms in the bed and breakfast definition?
Originally, if I could answer really quick, originally we got into this discussion because of the bed and breakfasts that were in the C1, but that may be moot because there's at least one that's larger than 3 rooms. That may be moot because we're treating that basically as a small hotel.
Jane has her hand up.
Jane, please.
I honestly don't understand why the parking requirement isn't in effect for uses for like a vacation rental or bed and breakfast, because we do have parking requirements in place, and vacation rentals are considered residential use. So we require parking for residential uses. And I don't understand. I mean, I guess that's a question for the attorney.
Yeah,
But,
I agree.
And it says, you know, you can't adversely impact the neighborhood, which I think is health, safety, and welfare issue. And I guess we can talk about that till we're blue in our faces, but I won't.
We have talked to the attorney about this. We can't treat B&Bs any different than short-term vacation rentals.
or
No, I
Airbnb?
realize that. No, I'm talking about vacation rentals are a residential use. A residential use has parking requirements. And I think along with adding another room to the definition we have for B&B, I'd like to keep it the same. I mean, I realize, they're treated the same as vacation rentals, but I don't really want to expand on that at this point. I'm done.
Thanks, Jane.
Has her hand up.
Sage?
Oh.
Was it Sage with a hand up? Or no, or
No.
Alex, sorry, Alex.
Alex, Sage, or Jessamine too.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be really quick since I think I'm off mute.
Oh, you are off mute.
I agree with that. We should keep our bed and breakfast 3 rooms. And that's it.
Thank you. Jessamine?
Hi. So one of the things that we had discussed that defined a bed and breakfast that I don't see added in was that the owner or caretaker lived on premises.
Yes, that's essential. I agree.
That was it. I just want that addition.
No, absolutely. And again, I agree with Jane as well. I did not realize that bed and breakfast in residential areas we couldn't do a parking limitation or impact park. That's a new one to me. I got to talk to Bill Sims about that. Candace, I want to make sure that we're on the right path with that we're getting the correct info. I know for Airbnbs, but not for bed and breakfast. That one I didn't realize we had no authority over them. That's news to me. So anyway, thank you. Was there another hand up?
Rusty has his hand up.
Rusty, please.
Yeah, when we're looking at B&Bs and these vacation rentals, at what point do they become more of a hotel motel? And I'm looking at them sprinkling their building. So just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments in this residential lodging 4C? Hearing none, I'd like to move to 4D, signs. Did we cover that, John, or we still have more on that one?
No, I got great direction on that. Thank you very much, everyone.
So 4E, mixed use?
4D, sorry.
4D
The
is
signs.
signs. That's what I was asking.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about the previous one.
No, signs, please.
Signs, this was an interesting discussion that started this off. It's been a little while since we went to the council. The council did initiate this process. We had a problem with the way our signs, our temporary signs, I'm only talking about temporary signs here. We have a problem in our code in that our temporary signs are treated differently and have different sizes for different types of temporary signs. And there was a Supreme Court decision where they had made the determination that we can have and restrict the size of a temporary sign, but we cannot restrict different sizes for different types of temporary signs. So if you have a real estate sign, a garage sale sign, a quote free speech sign, contractor sign, they all have to be treated the same. So we can treat them different sizes by different zones. We just can't treat them differently for different types of signs. So lately, the reason this came up, I think, was we'd had discussion about candidate signs. So signs advertising particular candidates or proposed propositions, et cetera. They are considered temporary signs as well. And in the residential area, we're recommending that size be limited to 6 square feet. And in the commercial area and industrial area, we're recommending temporary signs be limited to 8 square feet. So those are the 2 primary changes. And we've also provided a red line version of the code for your consideration.
It's big size. Those are good size signs. But yes, okay. Any questions, comments on that, on this particular issue, on the sign sizes? Anything, commissioners or?
Sage has her hand up.
Sage, please.
Yeah, so if we do this, political signs has an ARS. So they would still have to follow the ARS because it looks like we're taking out on, it doesn't give me the page, number 9, under, hold on. 59E9. It says, it looks like we're taking out the part where it talks about how, when they can go up and when they have to be taken down. And that's according to a statute, an Arizona revised statute. So we need to keep that somewhere in our ordinance, I think, so that people clearly understand that, because not everybody reads the Arizona revised statute.
So if I may clarify that, the ARS, if you read it carefully, applies to signs within the right of way. So we have the authority to regulate signs on private property, and the ARS deals with signs in the right of way. So they deal with signs on one side, we deal with the signs on the other. So it is different. We don't have, and I've had this discussion with the attorney, we don't have the ability to specify it has to be up or taken down so many days after election. It's a temporary sign. So I can clarify that with the attorney just to be sure, but
Yeah, let's get that. Just
the ARS is very different in that it deals with signs in the public right of way.
Thank you. Sage, you want to follow up?
Yeah, but it like skipped my mind. Sorry.
Welcome to my world. We're good. Thank you, dear. All right. Thank you. So I think we got the sign. Any other questions, comments on signs? Hearing none, we can go to 4E mix. Oh, sorry. Yes, you got it.
So my question is so then we're going to be to the point where they can only have them up for 45 consecutive days or a total of 90 days in a calendar year, period, right?
Yes, I believe that's the case. I'm not looking at the exact section. Where is that section? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I found it. 8 G8 for commercial and industrial. So 8 square feet, 90 days per calendar year, 45 consecutive days is the way in the commercial industrial. And I think the same thing happens in the residential, correct?
Great. Thanks, Sage. Thanks.
And I'll clarify your question, Councilmember Harvey. I'll clarify that question about the ARS and make sure.
Good. That's a great point. Yeah, keep it. Yep.
I do want to note that we added a list of prohibited signs. Those great big inflatable men that you see in front of car shops that wiggle around. I think we want to prohibit that sort of thing.
I think it's a good idea.
I did add a list.
Yeah.
If you think of anything else while you're driving around Cottonwood or Phoenix that we might want to add as prohibited, let me know.
Thank you. Moving right along to 4E mixed use. So the C1 and
fantastic.
Okay.
So mixed use in the C1, this actually was spurred by the discussion that we had about changing the residential lodging. That are we looking at, how do we look at mixed use? And I want to first define what I mean by mixed use. So the mixed use is not a hotel. Mixed use is not what was previously considered a boarding house, a rooming house. Mixed use, as I'm thinking about it, is a situation where you have more permanent residences living in the building. So an apartment complex on the back or the top with a commercial component in front or above or behind or something to that case. So this comes up in a couple of situations. A good example actually are the Romberger properties. House of Joy has an apartment and they can live in the apartment. Person who owns it can live in the apartment and then run the shop down below. The other example is now Mimi next door to that. And then the Roadrunner resale is a really good example of mixed use where the woman lives in the apartment, I believe, and sells her wares out of the same building. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about mixed use. And we've had some discussions about whether we want to include that in the industrial zone. I did have a call today with the attorney for VerdiX. They're very interested in allowing mixed use, having mixed use at the high school. And it brings up some other questions about parking. Do we want to have a reduction in parking for mixed use? I did have this conversation with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Chief Blair mentioned that anything that's mixed use will require fire sprinklers. So I think that's a key, a very important component that we will be adding. So with that, be happy to answer any questions, hear any thoughts, comments on whether this is something we should add or if we should just leave it alone, since currently you can do mixed use with a conditional use permit.
Right.
You have hands up from Mandy, Sage, and Jane, and I think Sage was first there.
Surprise, surprise. Sage.
Yeah, I got all my notes. And that, yeah, I come right back to where John ended on this is, this is already allowed by conditional use permit. And I think that we need to keep it that way. But my initial question when I saw this is, why are we discussing this? Because this is not something council initiated.
This was initiated by our Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Who's next, Candace?
Mandy, I guess.
Mandy?
Thank you,
Vice Mayor.
Dr. Mayor. I believe, so clarification first, I believe like the Hotel Jerome project, as we are looking at it currently, would be considered a mixed use, correct, John?
Correct.
Okay. And I know that there are some, probably several mixed use CUPs, both in the C1 district, but also I know of at least one building that has one, or at least I guess I shouldn't say no. I assume one other building has one in the industrial zone. I agree with Sage that, you know, a lot of this is already approved under conditional use. But I also think that it maybe not necessarily needs to be put into an allowable use, but I think it needs to be more clearly defined in our code with, so that it's not something that fluctuates council to council, commission to commission, and zoning administrator to zoning administrator. We don't really have a very clear line of demarcation on mixed use and some of these things like parking and where and that type of thing. I do like the conditional use permit on this, because who knows what sometimes with buildings. And from a safety standpoint and also a parking standpoint, I'd like to make sure that we're managing things in an appropriate way for our community. But I do think that we need to have some more detail in the ordinance on this type of conditional use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. And then who was next, please?
Jane.
Jane.
I just agree with Mandy and Sage that we already have residential use as a conditional use permit in the commercial and industrial zones. And I don't understand why we couldn't just redefine or go from there instead of adding something that says mixed use. Because we already have as a conditional use residential in both of those zones, and just expand on that a little bit and not confuse it with saying mixed use, because essentially it's the same thing and provided for in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Every night, I think.
Point of inquiry, please.
Yes?
John, mixed use is a specific, it's not specific necessarily to, okay, sorry, I'm going to start again. The conditional use permits that we issue for residential use in the C1 zone are unique to that residential unit, not necessarily that building, correct?
It travels with the property.
Right, but let's say that you have a building that has 2 floors and one floor is being used as retail, as commercial in the commercial district, and the other floor gets a CUP for residential use. That CUP is not eligible to be used on that other unit, correct?
Yeah, it would be specific to whatever that CUP was that was approved.
Whereas mixed use is more addressing the building as a whole versus the different types of each individual unit in the building, correct?
I see what you're getting at. I think the answer is it's probably been looked at differently over the years. If the council and the commission is interested in adding mixed use, I think it's important to clarify these things and have some standards of related to parking, related to when is it appropriate, how much, what sort of impacts, et cetera, potential concerns of the neighbors. Right now, the conditional use permit is required, but there's no standard that says, here's when it can be approved, here's when it can't be approved.
I absolutely agree. Thank you for the clarification, John.
Thanks, Mandy, great point. Thank you so much. Really good.
Rusty has his hand up.
Who does?
Chief Blair.
Chief, I've heard of him. Rusty.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mixed use is if you have a restaurant on one floor and you have residential on another floor, or it could be residential retail from floor to floor or in the same building, that's considered mixed use. In regards to fire, also, John mentioned sprinklers, but depending upon the size of the structure and the amount of units, if it's residential, there's going to be a whole gamut of fire code related items that would be also
absolutely
have to be put in, like emergency lighting, emergency exiting, third-party monitoring. There's a whole gamut of stuff that goes in addition to just sprinklers. So.
Thank you. Absolutely. Great, Rusty. Thank you. Appreciate that a lot.
Alex has her hand up.
Alex.
And I was just going to bring up fire safety before Rusty started talking about it. So we already have it as a conditional use permit. Again, to bring up fire safety and parking. To follow up a little on what Mandy was saying about detail in the ordinance, I think direction to staff at this point has been to continue doing it as we're doing it with the CUP, but maybe have anything that is looking at a CUP to start doing it new would go through the fire safety checklist of our fire chief. Yeah. And I do agree that we need more detail in our ordinance. We need it to be spelled out a little bit different. But I don't think that we need to call it mixed use because we already use a conditional use permit for the process. So
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I like the kitty there too. It's nice. I think one of the things, I think we're all realizing, and Rusty, as a credit to you, and it's also a burden of sorts, is the importance and recognition of fire safety in most of these activities. So thank you for that, and I'm in full agreement that we may have to make sure we've got that base covered for sure.
I'm going to try to get
somebody else. I say, oh, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Did you have a question?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk now or if it's at the end of the meeting, but I have a question.
Talk now. You can talk now.
So one of the reasons this is coming up is because I spoke with John Knight about our building, which is multi-leather. It's 3 stories. It's everything residential, commercial, and it changes all the time. And I'm having, I've had a problem recently in renting it because somebody wanted to do a business there, which they always had, and they kind of got some. It didn't just go smoothly, I would say, for that person. And that building is always altered on every floor. They live in it and have a business. Sometimes it's this, that, and the other. And I just needed part of this, the process here, thank you, John, is just to get some clarification so I know how to rent the building out, because some people say, okay, yeah, can I do business and live? Yeah, we've always done that. But then somebody got flack recently. So that's part of why this is being brought up, because I just want to be clear with my renters. I want an easy life.
There you go. Well said. And we're here to help provide that. And I think
so nobody's ever gotten a conditional use permit there. They've always done whatever they wanted to do because it's been everything from a clothing store to a shipping place to everything has changed in that place, but people have lived and had commercial in the same floor and the same. And so I just want to have clarification.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. I see the chief. I don't know whether John was going to have some follow up as well, but Chief, since you got your hand up, let's hear from you first, please.
Yeah, anytime you have a change of use, that requires fire. If you keep it the way it is right now, then you are okay. But if you're switching things around and stuff, you need to look into sprinkling the building. Because in my code, it says any new use, any mixed use, and if you're changing, then that's a change of use.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh, Nancy, you had a follow-up question or comment?
Well, I guess because it's always changed use and we've never done anything because, you know, whatever, we've been here for a while. We haven't ever had to do anything different. I don't mind putting sprinkler systems in or whatever it needs, but Rusty, am I confused or can you clarify that a little more?
Well, my code says if any change of use in the structure, so if you're going retail to residential from floor to floor, that's a change of use.
But what if they're always combined? It's always commercial retail. So like,
Now, if you're switching them around from one floor to the next or whatever, that's a change of use.
but we're actually not, because both floors, the bottom floor has always been commercial, but the other 2 floors have been mixed residential commercial. So what do we need to do to make it appropriate or cool or under code?
Well,
I think Rusty has to visit. I think Rusty has to take a look.
If you got a retail on one side and then all of a sudden you switch it over to your residential side, that's a change of use. Okay, that to me, that whole building is a commercial structure. You have a business above and you have a business below, and as far as I know, you have residential in between, and you have on the very top, you have another residence up there living.
That middle floor, but Rusty, the middle floor is actually both residential and commercial.
Are you changing them up?
No, I mean, it's always been both.
If you just keep it all the same, you're fine. But if you decide to change the other side to retail, then that's a change of use. You get what I'm saying there?
Sort of.
Keep it the same, you're okay. Hey, Tracy.
But if you're not changing anything, you're okay. I always encourage everybody to sprinkle their buildings, you know, regardless, because you do have residents sleeping there and you do have 2 different businesses there. But however, you guys have been in existence forever. And as long as you're not changing anything, I can't make you sprinkle the building. But ideally, I would prefer that being sprinkled, especially as close proximity to the other structures that are all wood. You know, it would behoove you.
Thank you, Rusty. Thanks, Nancy. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, good. And best wishes to Tracy as well. Okay, do we have any? Sorry, who else?
Sage has her hand up.
Yes, Sage, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of help with clarifying that. I think maybe some misunderstanding was happening there. So my understanding from as long as I can remember that building, the top floor has been both commercial and residential combined. So like the person has a business, but he also lives in that level. The middle level is also the same. There's a business in it, but the people also live in it. And then the bottom level is fully commercial, nobody lives in it. And I believe that has been that way all of my life. So
Cool.
in my opinion, Nancy, I don't think you need to change anything.
Yeah, it sure sounds that way. I think so too, Sage. Thank you. I think you're doing exactly what you've been doing, so it should be fine. Thank you. Okay, is there anything else, John? So can we move on to telecom ordinance?
Absolutely.
4F?
Just a brief comment about telecom, and then we can wrap this meeting up, I think.
Yes.
We started some discussions with the attorney actually before I got involved, before I started here. So this has been going on for a while. The FCC adopted a new set of rules, which basically is very draconian when it comes to local control. And then the state of Arizona adopted some rules also, which basically gives the telecommunications companies free rein to submit and process permits unless the local jurisdictions put in some standards. So we've had this discussion with the council. It's been a while now. I can't remember exactly when, maybe way back in March, but it's been a while now. We included a copy of the most recent ordinance that I found locally, which was the Sedona ordinance. So I just wanted to bring it up again and see if we could get some clarification from the council. At that time, Mayor Barber and I went down and actually attended a seminar to learn a little bit more about the telecommunications, both the federal and the state ordinance. Basically, the bottom line is if we do nothing and somebody submits an application for let's say a 5G facility, we have very little authority and control. We cannot collect any fees. We simply need to approve whatever they propose. But if we do have an ordinance, then we do have the ability to regulate them with some minor requirements, including aesthetic standards or screening standards, which I think is really important. So we did bring this up a while ago, just trying to get some clarification if the council wants us to pursue this or if we want to wait and see if we do get an application submitted. So thank you.
Thanks. I
Alex,
see Alex and Sage. Alex, did you, I thought.
I recently asked Candace for the photo. Candace, am I the only one besides you that has seen that photo out of everyone that's attending this meeting right now?
Yeah, I could probably get it up on the screen here if you give me a minute, so.
The photo.
Okay, so I took some notes. November 14th of 2017, Verizon came in front of the town council.
I remember.
They had a plan to put up 2 new poles in the main strip of town, one of which is right there by the park, kind of where Moondog sits and plays on Fridays, with a big, what they call a small cell site, but it's the size of a refrigerator. So down below it, it looks like there's another box, and it does not look like it's on the sidewalk. It looks like it's in between the sidewalk and the street. So my point is, SHPO has said that Jerome is the #1 Old West history left in the whole state. We're #1. #2 is Bisbee. Maybe #3 is Tombstone. So we had our electricity come in here very early. And then we had it updated probably when they updated from the original electricity to more modern electricity. So where I'm going with this, everyone, is we don't need any more poles in town. No. 20th century infrastructure is not Old West. Verizon would have to put up their own new poles because APS owns all the other poles. So a safe way to bring 5G to communities is fiber optic. We already have fiber optic coming into town. So if we look at the page that the zoning administrator put in our packet, we have aesthetic standards, visual screening, emphasis placed on not being visible. I think we need to go more of stealth standards, no new poles. Radio frequency standards, the Physicians for Safe Technology and the Children's Health Defense actually have a landmark lawsuit filed against the FCC that they're getting a hearing scheduled for January 25th, 2021. And they're going to talk about health effects. So radio frequency standards, #2 on this ordinance that we're looking at, that they need to demonstrate compliance with standards of RF radiation. Environmental compliance. They have thrown out and rejected all of the scientific research that says it's harmful. One of the major problems with this is what John talked about, that the states kind of tied our hands in how much we can charge, and if we're allowed to give away our right of way, if they can go on poles, things like this. We need to really be hesitant in a National Historic Landmark of the best Old West history and not have a bunch of power poles with refrigerator-sized boxes.
Thank you. But
So
you know, in addition,
Jack, I'm really into stealth standards. I want them to prove that environmentally and the RF radiation is healthy. As far as on the next page of our ordinance, allow on town property, I don't think we should allow it on town property either. I think we should make it as hard as possible for them to just maybe give up and try not to put 5G small cell sites in Jerome. And I'll stop talking now and let everyone else have a chance to speak on
There you
this.
go. Thanks, Alex. Just so you know too, and before I get to Sage, I'm not a fan of the 5G at all. What we're learning around the nation is that the bands that they want to use to promote the 5Gs in most states are already taken. So even though they want to do 5G, they're not going to have access to the state-of-the-art bands that they thought they were. And I have no interest in adding 5G to Jerome. So period. And I agree with you, whether from a safety perspective or from a practicality. I just don't think it's going to give us a benefit. You know, the juice ain't worth the squeeze as far as I'm concerned with the 5G. So that's my 2 cents. And now say, who is the next hand up, Candace? I'm sorry. Sage?
Sage, yes.
Okay,
Can
good.
I do
But
a
thank
little
you, Alex.
clarification? Can I do a little clarification, Sage, real quick?
Yes, please.
Okay, so in 1996, the FCC came out with what they said was, the radiation standards on cell phones and things. So I don't think that I finished my statement when I talked before about how the scientists and the most of the other countries in the world besides the US have said, we're not rolling out 5G until we find out the health effects.
Yeah.
So that is what the Children's Health Network and the Physicians for Safe Technology are doing. The FCC has spent $0.00 on any non-biased, not industry-related tests on what these radiations can do to you since 1996. And again, what Jack talked about, how the bandwidth is already taken. The 4G they are now saying is working better than 5G is working. If we put in all these small cell sites, it is going to be a lot more energy. And I have heard that it is a way for the cell phone companies to not become obsolete. They want to continue to say we need 5G, we need 6G, we need 7G to make sure that they still are making money. So again, National Historic Landmark, we do not need any new power poles. And Candace, if you can please show the picture to everyone so they can kind of get a gist of what I'm talking about. Thank you.
There you go. Can everybody see that?
It's the bottom photo. The top photo is showing you without the superimposed pole, and the bottom photo is showing you with the superimposed pole. Now, I think you would need to blow it up a little bit more, Candace, to be able to see what's on the ground at the bottom of the pole above the red sports car. It looks like a smart meter on the ground beside the telephone pole. And again, if I was standing there trying to take a picture of the park and the church, there's this big refrigerator-sized box right there, not talking about the health implications of anyone that works or plays right by that telephone pole.
Thank
Point
you.
of information real
Yeah,
quick.
let's get Sage, please.
If you're using your tablet, you can get on there and zoom into it like you would do on your phone or a touch screen, anything.
Right. I think it speaks for itself. Yeah, it really does. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you.
You're welcome, Jack. Sorry, I get pretty passionate about it.
No, that's
if
good.
we probably polled everyone in Jerome if they care about 5G and if they have good enough cell service, I think every one of us would say we have good enough cell service and we don't need.
I agree.
Mayor Rusty has his hand up.
Rusty, and then,
Sage.
oh, sorry, Sage. Sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry, Sage.
No, I just did a point of information so everybody could zoom in on that
gotcha.
and really see it because I've seen the picture. And I want to reiterate everything that Councilmember Barber just said. I'm right there with you, Jack. I don't even want to see it in town. Personally, I think that if we could just prohibit them from coming in, I would prefer that. This is not a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a, like I said, the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
If I could just
Okay.
add a couple quick comments before we finish this item.
Well, did Rusty have his hand up?
Yeah, Rusty had
Oh,
his
I
hand up.
apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to put, I don't really need any more obstructions to impede my ability to get
There you
around.
go. That's right.
I mean, that one there is right next to a fire hydrant. You know, that would not be conducive for me.
Yeah, Rusty's using 2G right now. So.
He whiz.
Okay, John.
Thank you. When Councilmember Barber said 10G, I just went into
shock.
10G. That sounds great.
Yeah, really.
What would that look like? Hopefully it wouldn't be a problem. So the important thing to keep in mind here is the federal law and the state law. In a way, it's a lot like the short-term vacation rentals. We don't have a way to prohibit these things entirely. The best we can hope for is to restrict them significantly. So to do that, we need to develop an ordinance. If we do nothing, we risk them coming in and installing these things without any standards or requirements. If we try to prohibit them entirely, we risk getting involved in a lawsuit with an entity with very large pockets. So,
yep. No, John, I agree. So what we need to do, and I think Candace, is that we got to talk to Bill Sims and see how do we word this ordinance so that we do not give up any control relative to what they want to do in our town, that we plant our, stuff in the ground, that we're engaged, that they just can't show up because we didn't do anything. Let's make sure what we do has the kind of controls in it that to prevent them from doing their thing. Alex, give you a quick 30 seconds here.
I would offer to work with John and Candace and another council member on what we can do of bringing an ordinance in front of the council. Would we want to do it before that hearing on January 25th to find out what the FCC, what the final say is on that? So I would think that we should talk about it again in January or maybe at the February meeting, because again, the thing that I left out is that the FCC said if we don't do what they tell us to, that we could lose our sales tax. So Candace, you had sent me some excerpts from what the council had talked about at that meeting, along with this picture. If you'll send that out to everyone so they can kind of come up to speed on what happened the last time Verizon came in front of us with a proposal to put in 2 small cells. I told them something about the fire station, and then I was under the impression that the new antenna that went up on Sunshine Hill this last year or this last 2 years was Verizon's new 5G, but I could never get a definitive on that or not. So there was a new tower that went up on Sunshine Hill after Jerome said no in 2017.
Thank you. Candace, you okay with that?
Yes, and I thought I saw Sage's hand up, but.
Okay, let's.
Just a little bit of information. I have been reading some of this stuff too from the FCC and looking into some of the appeals, and the FFC has literally denied every appeal to this law.
Thank you. So we just have to, so that's why I need Bill in there, Alex and Candace and John, when you, just to make sure we're wording it in a way that we're not giving up our control. Whatever, just how we can do that. I don't know the answer, but hopefully, Alex, Bill, and John come up with
on that. And it's possible that with a new administration coming in nationally, things might become more environmentally.
That's true. That's true too. Okay, so before we get our next motion for adjournment, is our chairman of our commission here available?
Yes, I am.
Hey, there you are. Yay, Jessamine. I wanted to thank you and the commissioners again for all they do. I appreciate, they were the strong silent type tonight, but just know how much we appreciate what they're doing and want to collaborate at every opportunity. And I think we're on the right path. So I really appreciate you and your colleagues for what they're doing and for working with us together.
Thank you,
All right.
Jack. We all
I mean,
strive to work together.
yeah, it's great. And I see, John, what do you
Just-
got? Last licks or what?
Just a quick comment, 5 seconds. Just a heads up that we're going to put code enforcement discussion on this agenda, but we've decided that we're going to hold a special meeting. So I believe
Good.
Candace will send out a doodle poll
Yes,
for
I
us
saw that. Yes,
sometime
Yeah.
in January, or are we going to try and do it in
We're
December?
going to try to do it in December,
in December.
soon as possible, actually. So
If there's no, and again, to the commissioner folks that are on here, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
It's really appreciated. Is there a motion that we could have here, Sage?
Adjourn?
Yes, thank you. Is there a second? I see a cat raise his hand. We'll take the cat vote.
I'll give that.
Okay, there you go. And not hearing any discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's 8:11, and we are now adjourning our special meeting, joint meeting of the Jerome Town Council and the Jerome Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you all very much. Stay safe out there. Appreciate it a lot.
Good night.
Thank
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a great evening. All the best.
Thanks all. Good night.